From the News Channel 8 studios, let's talk live with your hosts, Natasha Barrett and Melanie Hastings.
All right, coming up, well, the school year will be winding down, and so will your child's motivation. We're going to have some ways to keep them up to speed. That's coming up next. Okay, now that for most of us spring break has come and gone, students and their parents find themselves really in the final stretch of the school year right now. So if your kid or kids have a case of spring fever, we hope we've got some answers for you. Educational expert Ann Dolin is back here with me. She has tips that you can use to help battle procrastination and, you know, just staying motivated. Yeah. That's the hardest thing. I mean, I think parents sometimes say, gosh, I'm not above bribing my kid at this point. Is that bad? It kind of is.
Maybe small bribes?
Small bribes, okay.
Okay.
Here's the deal, Natasha.
Give us some examples of that.
So, daily little bribes, or we'll call them incentives, are really fine. So if you say, for example, if your homework is done by 8 and I've checked it, you can have a half-hour later bedtime, or you can have more time on video games. What's not okay is those long-term bribes. For example, I had a parent tell me a couple weeks ago, I told my daughter, if she gets straight A's this quarter, I'll bring her to Disney World in June. That is not a good thing because it's way too far out, and kids just cannot maintain motivation. They're going to fail. So it's far better, and the research shows, to give little incentives on a daily basis than something that's too far out.
Smaller ones, and it'll make a difference. Makes sense. Right now, we do have a chunk of time left, and I think some people say, well, it's almost over. Okay, I might just, like, you know, cash it in with this last year. But there's still time to make a difference. And what do you mean by that?
Well, there is. These grades still count. You know, kids still have to perform in school. It's not over. They think it is because they just want to play outside, hang out with their friends. The weather is nice. They really do lose momentum. But I really recommend to parents that they really sit down and have a family meeting and recognize it and say, hey, I've noticed that since the weather's been nice, it's really hard to get homework done. What are some strategies? What do you think we can do about it? And
so
throw
put
it
it on them.
Put it on your kids, absolutely. See what they come back with. If you want to come back with something, one idea that usually works for parents and families is to have an hour of quiet time after dinner. That means no electronics, and you're either doing homework or you're reading.
That's got to be scary for children. No TV, no video games, no phones, no Facebook, or whatever else you allow them. You know, that's tough.
Well, it really takes the stress level down a notch. It's kind of cathartic in a way, and it really works out great because then you don't feel like you're having to poke and prod your child to get homework done. They're going to naturally do it when they don't have access to electronics.
And speaking of this motivation, you talked about them possibly coming up with the ideas. If you know, if you have teenagers and you know how that can go, they're just, you know, they might even laugh at you at that point. Because I think there's a certain age where you still have that cooperation, you know, and then after that, well, good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. And that's when you really want to try to take those privileges that you want to grant, like use of the car, going out late with your friends at night, and tie those to getting the work done. So it's not acceptable to be getting phone calls and emails from teachers that work hasn't been turned in, and then, you know, Jimmy's out with his friends till midnight on Friday. Really, there has to be some give and take. So it's perfectly acceptable for a parent to say, when you show me that you're responsible, you can have all those privileges. But in this family, responsibility means getting homework done and turning work in on time.
Yeah, if you want this, you got to do this. It's the give and take. Let's move it to procrastination. We've talked about motivation. A lot of people are last-minuters and have been that way for my whole life. I mean, it's just the way, I mean, I guess I was born to be in news, just to have a deadline. But I think there are plenty of people that until they need to do it, do they do it? And it doesn't always work out great.
It doesn't, but you know, it's not necessarily such a bad thing because there are people, probably like you, that thrive when that adrenaline is pumping and they, you know, are against a deadline and they get things done. So there's functional procrastination and there's dysfunctional procrastination. Functional is, you know, you have a deadline, you have your math homework due on Wednesday, you get it done on Tuesday at 10 p.m. That's functional. Dysfunctional is when you have a major term paper due on Wednesday and you haven't even started it, and it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday night. That's not going to work out. So you kind of have to pick your battles with your kids and kind of figure out, okay, is my child really getting it done? Does it just bother me because I'm not like that? Or is it dysfunctional? And you really want to address the dysfunctional and really leave alone.
Another factor could be just over-scheduling our kids. We've got sports, we may have music lessons. I mean, I think sometimes you need to sit back and kind of go, okay, what do we need here?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed in Northern Virginia and D.C. and Maryland, there are some type A parents.
Some overachievers.
Yes, and they expect the same for their kids, and it's kind of a natural feeling. The problem is kids don't like being overscheduled, and they just feel overwhelmed. And so when your child is, you know, really dreading going to that piano lesson or trying out for yet another soccer team, that might be a sign that there's too much on the student's plate. Sometimes parents will say, you know what, you get to do one activity a quarter. But if you feel like it's reasonable, but it's just hard to keep track of, that's when you want to get something like a wall calendar. In the Martha Stewart collection is fantastic. She just came out with a whole new line of products. And there's one that I got in my house, which I love. It's a sticky magnetic dry erase board. It's a calendar, and you just smack it up on your refrigerator, you put in all the dates, and it has different color pens for different kids if you want a color code like that. But it's really helpful when kids see what their schedule is. And a visual reminder is far better than that verbal one where you're saying, come on, Jimmy, let's go. You have soccer practice. And
yeah, and they're not thinking that. A great idea. Ann Dolin, thanks for coming here.
Thanks for having me.